Hey guys, welcome to Rebel Leader Academy. I am Rose, biotech futurist, and one of the co-founders here at the Academy. So I'm super excited today because it is the beginning of a four-part series called The Future of Work. And this is really at the heart of everything we do here at the Academy and what we teach. Because one of the first ways that we are going to move our incredible planet out of scarcity into global systems of abundance is by the elimination of what we call work. But before I get into that, today's training is all about the interesting threat in quotes, that we have going from technology. And we're going to get into what kind of tech is really at the heart of what is, quote, threatening our jobs and our income security. And then we're going to dive into later in the series how we can actually address that as individuals. So to get started, let me just get set up here for a second. Awesome, looks good. Hopefully that looks good to you guys. Looks good on my end. To get started, I want to go over with you how this is going to go. So today, part one, we're talking about, like I said, the potential threat to our own income security, as well as kind of the stability of the whole economic system, not just in the US, if that's where you're viewing from, but really around the world. And then on our next, in step two, we're going to talk about the bigger context of what's going on and how we got here, kind of the evolution of the idea of a job. And then in part three, we're going to take you through the future. So where is this all going? Where are we going as a species? And where are we going kind of as individuals as well? Because those two are very interconnected. And then finally, in about a week from now, we will be talking about the solution and how you can be part of it and how you can make sure that your family and your livelihood isn't affected by these transitions, or rather not negatively affected, but actually very positively affected, and how you can be part of how we're going to take this world into that greater state of abundance using these things that right now, we consider kind of threatening. A lot of us are fearful around technology, and a lot of us see the negatives that they can bring, but there's a lot of upside too. So we'll be getting into that later on in the series. But for now, let's dive into the idea of, this idea of a threat. Like, what are we really facing with all of these changes? So why is even this discussion important in the broader sense? So tech replacement job loss is already happening. This isn't something that's coming, it's something that's actually already very much here. We are seeing numbers come in of millions of jobs already being lost just in the United States around automation. And this, automation means different things in different industries. So it's the whole kind of idea of this automation shift. And that includes some different kinds of technologies that I'll explain in a bit. The main thing that I want you to really take away from this is that the difference between this and things in our past is that technology grows exponentially. This is not a linear progress. We as humans, we are set up to think linearly in time. So we think, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we see these steps as like, first this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And that's just naturally the way we process information, the way our brain works. But technology builds on itself in such a way that it's exponential change. So it's not like we have one technology and two technology and three. No, we have one technology and then we have two and then we have four and then we have 8. And the rate of change is really what is the most concerning aspect about this particular change in our economy, and much larger than the economy. We'll keep a focus to that. And finally, this is important because you have to be prepared for these changes. You need the context in which these changes are happening. You need to know what is going on, and you need to have a plan. Now, most people right now know neither. They don't know what's actually happening. They see headlines here and there. Maybe there's, some kind of scare tactic. Sometimes you see headlines that are like, up to 60% of jobs are going to be lost in the next 5 years. all the way down to don't worry about it, it'll be fine, we'll replace these jobs with other jobs. So there's a lot of misinformation out there that I hope to clear up, and it's going to be extremely useful to you as we move forward thinking about your own career and life path. So here at the Academy, like I mentioned, our number one goal is to show you how to stop this idea of work. We have this idea of work hard ingrained into us from the time we're children, no matter really where in the world you are living right now. And the idea of work specifically that we're talking about is to perform work or fulfill duties regularly for wages or salary. So this is something that you have to do. As you see, it's like compulsion or necessity. This isn't something you wake up with all kinds of energy that like, great, you want to do this, or you feel really passionate about this, or this is going to make a big impact. No, when I talk about work, I'm talking about the things that you specifically do for money that really you feel you would rather not be doing, but you have to do it. This idea of work and the elimination of the idea of work is something that's actually going to help us transition you personally out of all of that struggle and frustration and overwhelm, and into a life where you feel you wake up every day and the energy that you spend is used for activities that are actually useful, that you feel are useful and meaningful and helpful to others and impactful. The kind of life that you actually wake up and you go, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to start the day. Or by the time you die, you look back and you're like, damn, I lived a really good life. That's the kind of work that we're talking about eliminating here, is all the shit that gets in the way of you feeling those positive feelings and making that bigger impact. So the idea of the economy shifting and what it's shifting into is at the core of what we do here. And it's at the core of our teachings. And so this is why we're starting with this particular training around the future of work. A lot of people teach in a very fundamental, one-dimensional way. And we always do our trainings according to this pyramid. So it's not necessarily a pyramid in terms of, energy is better than physical. That's not what we're talking about. But I'm just saying that we always start off teaching on the physical level. It's kind of the tangibles, the what's and the how's. And then we move into what that means for you as an individual, your psychology, your emotional makeup. And then we move up into teaching about the topic from the idea of systems. So from the idea of political systems, governments, laws, rules, all of those kinds of things, we see that as like top tier systems that everybody within a culture or society kind of has to adhere to in order to be part of that society and not get in trouble, go to jail, all that kind of stuff. And then at the next level, we talk about the energetics of the whole thing. So some people like to use, the language of consciousness. Some people like to use the language of spirituality. Whatever that is to you, that unifying force, that thing that animates, that's what we're talking about at that level. So when we're talking about the future of work, this particular lesson about the threat is really talking about that physical level. And then as we go further into this series, we're going to be talking about you as an individual, about the systemic consequences of this, and of course about the kind of bigger consciousness energetic shift that's happening. So specifically around work, how bad is it really going to be when we look at all of the automation, the robots, the AI that's happening? We're going to talk about that first. Then we're going to go, what the fuck is actually stealing your job? When you hear, oh, these things are stealing your job, what is it? Because a lot of people don't understand the acronyms and the tech, all of the lingo that goes along with it. Again, we tend to hear these words like artificial intelligence and something pops into our head when really it's not what we're made to really think it is by the media. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And haven't we survived worse? I love this question, right? So haven't we survived worse economic breakdowns? We've survived depressions. We've survived global wars. Like, is it really that bad? And what makes this different? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So how bad is it really going to be? Love, love, love this question, because even the experts can't seem to pinpoint an answer. We have, how about I say really here, this graph, where you can see the jobs that are projected to be lost and the amount of jobs that are projected to be created because of this transition with technology. And this is just over what you're looking at a graph up to 2022. So this is not far in the future. This is happening now. In fact, you could see in 2018, they estimated that over 3 million jobs were created by tech. Cool. But we have 13, almost 14 million jobs lost to tech. So that's kind of a really harsh statistic, and that's just 2018. So what I did for you, if you look, all of the things in red, like we can see these are actually job losses. So they're projecting this is not going to be good. Even with the jobs created, we're still at a loss. And a couple of them, you know, they're pretty optimistic and they're like, cool, yeah, we lost, let's say 1.8 million, but we're going to gain 2.3, right? So there's that. And then if we look, like as the years go on, 15, 20 years in the future, the projections just get kind of wild. Nobody really knows at this point because, again, technology is exponential and we don't have the ability to truly predict where this is going. So, you know, how artificial intelligence meets virtual reality, meets Internet of Things, we just don't know yet. We can't know yet how all of these factors are going to interact and how that's going to create or destroy jobs. So, you know, some of these statistics, they're crazy. You're looking at worldwide, you know, they think worldwide we're going to have a decent increase in the amount of jobs, but again, it's what kind of jobs and who's qualified for those jobs, who's trained for them. And that is a really, really big issue when we look at these statistics. Even if you look at overall, you know, you've got 10 jobs created for every 1 job lost. It could be 10 jobs created who are computer programmers, right? Versus that those 9 jobs that were potentially lost were jobs that more people have the knowledge and ability to fulfill. So it's not an equal one-to-one. It's not like this person A over here loses this kind of job, but is qualified for and gains this kind of job. That's not how it works. So those individuals who are losing jobs are not necessarily the same individuals who can then regain jobs on the other end of this cycle. So that's something to keep in mind when we look at these statistics. But again, even when we look, it just gets like by 2035, everyone's kind of like, I have no idea how many jobs are going to be created by then because we just don't know. So let's go into what is actually stealing our jobs, right? So we always hear the robots are coming, and there's some truth to that for sure. When we look at things like this, we have 2 different ways of viewing robots. We have the physical robots that do manual things. And then we have the artificial intelligence, which is, for a lot of people, the quote scariest of all the tech that's coming. You have artificial intelligence. These are going to, quote, steal the jobs of, let's say, lawyers and doctors. Things that need a lot of fast-paced quantitative thinking, such as diagnosis or recommendations based on a hard-coded set of things like laws. That's where artificial intelligence is going to come in and really sweep up jobs that are going to highly paid professionals right now. So this is at all aspects of our economy. It's not just like the lower tiers like we usually hear about, but really it's everyone. And then, of course, we have what people get very, very scared about too, are looking at the robots. So here we have Boston Dynamics. And in Boston Dynamics, they are one of the leading companies in the world right now heading up robotics on the physical level. So training robots to do things that humans do, but better and stronger. Faster, meaning better, meaning stronger, faster, more efficiently, all those things. Because obviously they're able to create bodies that are for specific things and, you know, can pick up way more than a human ever could, things like that. So I'm not going to get into the discussion in this training around the politics of these robots, you know, I'm not going to get into militarizing the robots or that whole discussion of what that can do. That's for a different time. Right now, I'm just talking about what these robots can do in terms of warehouses and factories and deliveries, moving things around, like literally being more efficient in our physical environment than we humans can be. So those are the types of jobs that they would be replacing. And we have here Sophia. So this particular robot is an artificial intelligence named Sophia. What's interesting about Sophia is that she was actually given citizenship in, I forget which country, but last year she was given citizenship because they considered her intelligent enough to be alive, right? So we're not at the level where our artificial intelligence is thinking like a human. They think very quantitatively and differently. But we are at the level where we're seeing conversation and learning at a level that in several years, I'm not going to give a date because there's a lot of back and forth about the date, but let's just say sometime within our lifetimes, we're going to be able to see this artificial intelligence surpass the intelligence of a human. And by that, I mean, they're going to be able to process faster. They're going to be able to crunch information faster than a human brain could. Right now, they're not quite there yet, but they're getting there. They're working on it. So that's the kind of intelligence that would be replacing things that we currently think of as very highly skilled professions. Now, these images are what people kind of think these look like, because these are usually what's posted up in the media because they're the most dramatic. But this tends to be what robots actually look like. So when you're thinking, what robot is stealing my job? It's not going to be a Sophia-looking robot. It's going to be one of these. So it's going to be something more along the lines of a warehouse bot that's more efficient at going and collecting things. These are actually in Amazon's warehouses right now. And the picture below is a quantum computer. So that's one of the highest powered computers right now, able to process the most. And that article just came out today with that particular computer as one of the best right now in the world. So this is what they actually look like, kind of dispelling the notion of, militaristic bots and humanoid artificial intelligence. That's not the majority of the tech right now that's coming to, quote, steal your job. And then finally, we have things like 3D printing. 3D printing is the ability to print in real physical objects from different materials quickly. So in metals, I do believe they do glass now, in different synthetics. And 3D printing, if you think about the manufacturing process, which is one of the places where most job loss is talked about. One, if you're at a big warehouse, you can use the robots to, organize the warehouse, do all of the order fulfillment kind of processes. And then you have 3D printing. 3D printing can actually manufacture the product right there on site. There's no more need necessarily for big shipping back and forth for resources and things like that. You don't take it from one production plant to another. You actually 3D print the product right there in one piece. And it's, it is a lot less expensive and a lot more efficient. So from a sustainability standpoint, it's fantastic. From a human job standpoint, not so much. And then you look at, the ability to, we're coming along, it's not quite there yet, but we are working on 3D printing artificial organs. So actually 3D printing cells from stem cells. So we can 3D print organisms as well. Huge, huge implications for us as a species, positive implications. Again, when you look at jobs though, it's an interesting thing that's happening there with jobs and with medical professions. And number 3, haven't we survived worse? Now, I actually really love this chart because it summarizes some of the major points of our economic evolutions, or revolutions as they call them, all the way from when we first had mechanical production through what we're calling the 4th stage of artificial intelligence. So as we go through, you can see from like 1784, we have mechanical production, railroads, and steam power. And then from there, we were in that age for a good 200 years or so. And then we moved into the second phase there of mass production. We got electrical power, and we got things like the advent of the assembly line. Again, totally transformed our economies around the world, the way we produce. And then finally, we have automation in that third, around 1969. That was the advent of computers, right? The advent of electronics, huge turning point in how we do business with each other and how the world works. If you look, those are transitions that happened over at least 100 years, about 200 years. If you think about, let's say, the Industrial Revolution is one that most of us are familiar with, right? That revolutionized work. People started going to factories to work. They started doing one particular thing all day long instead of knowing how to do the whole process of a product, right? Instead of having craftsmen, we went to just having people that, you know, could do a rivet or could do this piece or could do that piece. Huge difference. But if you think about it in terms of the individual, right? So if you're an individual and you have a trade and, you know, you're shifting from, okay, I can do A to Z of this product, and now you only want me to do N, right? You only want me to do this little piece of it. That's okay. Like, yeah, I need a little bit of training, but it's not, I need an entire new 10 years worth of school to understand how to do this new job, right? So we have that this is a long process. It's not like all of a sudden, whoop, all the jobs are gone. This is a lot. It's a transition into the factories. It's a transition into the Industrial Revolution. And it's a bit of a better transition for the individual because they don't have to learn so much to do that leap. What makes what we're facing so different than before is the leaps and the adaptation that we have to make in order to stay relevant. So whereas you had a craftsman who could do A to Z, now only has to do N, minimal training, now you have somebody that's, say, you know, one that we hear a lot about, truck drivers, like automation with cars, right? Automated driving. We're going to put upwards of 3, sometimes they depend on the statistics you read, upwards of 10 million people out of jobs if you consider taxi drivers, people that do long haul shipping, all of those. We're looking at a huge portion of our population that is now jobless. So are we going to take someone that was truck driving, let's say, or driving a taxi and transition them into being a computer engineer? That's a much bigger leap for an individual to make, and it's a much bigger leap for society to make. And what's even kind of compounding the problem and making it more complex is we don't have a lot of time to transition because, again, technology moves exponentially. It's not linear. So it's not as if we have, you know, the next 50, 75 years to figure this out. We have the next 10, maybe 20 years to figure this out. And that is what is scaring a lot of people. It's what is concerning those like you who are listening to this and going, you know, wait, whoa, what the hell are we doing? Like, we're going to put a lot of people out of work. We're not going to be able to train them for something more high tech. What are we going to do? Literally, what are we going to do with all these people in the next 10, 20, 25 years? And that's where a lot of the fear, that's where all the threat is coming from. So how bad is it really going to be? Kind of anybody's guess, especially as we go out 20 years from now, because we just don't know. We can't predict that far in advance anymore. Things are moving too quickly. What is stealing our jobs? Well, you have robotic automation, you have artificial intelligence, and then you have things like 3D printing. And I didn't even get into all the other tech around that. We have things like, you know, the Internet of Things, which has sensors and is connecting all of our everyday appliances and goods to one holistic system, which can be great, and we'll talk about that. But it's also one of those factors that's just pulling us in a different direction, pulling us in this higher tech functioning world that a lot of us aren't ready to be in, aren't ready to have jobs in. And then haven't we survived worse? So no, not really. I mean, worse is relative, but it's more like we have never had to face this rate of change, this amount of unknown in such a small time, and make leaps against things that aren't human. So in all of those other eras that we have transitioned, we've kind of been human to human in our evolution. We've kind of been, okay, so maybe you have more school, or more training, whatever. Maybe, you can argue intelligences, but it's still human to human. All of a sudden, we're now up against an intelligence that's not human, thinks very differently than we do, processes information differently, and for many, many things is able to do it better. So if we have created as a species this thing to do it better, we should probably let it do it because that's what we created it for. But on the other hand, what's the rest of us going to do? How are we going to make a living? How are we going to transition? And for me, this is the scariest part, is that there's no oversight per se. There's no governmental body or agency or anything that, number one, is able to keep up with the technology that's being introduced. And so they can't, whether you like or hate regulations, there's no even conversation around it. My background is in biotech. So what I mean by that is I look at technology and I look at the way that it affects all aspects of human well-being, from our physiology to our psychology and then up through sociology. That's really my thing and what I look at. So I run in these different worlds that I go to these tech conferences and hear about all these amazing techs right from the people that are creating them, from the people, in Silicon Valley and China, around the world. And they're super, super excited for good reason about the things that they are creating. They look at the upside potential and they see, look, this is going to be amazing for humanity. Look at what we're going to be able to do with this tech. And then I have the conferences that I go to that are, in psychology, that are looking at sociological issues right now, that are looking at, things like how are teens being affected by living constantly on social media, those sorts of things. And as I sit in these conferences, I remember one of the reasons the Academy came to life is because I was sitting in a tech conference, listening to these brilliant, brilliant people from around the world. And what I was hearing from them is that they're so excited to release this technology onto the world, into jobs, into marketplaces, to give business owners access to, the latest robots so they can make their factories more efficient, and give hospitals the latest artificial intelligence so that they can make better diagnosis. Fantastic, right? I mean, those are all wonderful. They talked, one of the biggest things I remember, and this was the moment that got me, was they were talking about automation in cars, in driving. So autonomous vehicles, the whole suite of products that they are looking to unleash right into the world. And how amazing it'll be. You'll be able to get to point A to point B faster and safer and all these things. And what I wasn't hearing in these discussions, and what I realized in that moment, is that the inventors of the tech, they're not speaking to most of us. They're not speaking to our fears. They're not speaking to our humanity in terms of, we need time, right? We have not adapted quickly. We need time for ideas to sink in, for things to process, for us to integrate. And with the speed that these amazing inventors are creating for us, the rest of us, we're not having that time to catch up. And that very big gap is what's causing a lot of this fear, is what's causing a backlash against new technologies that could actually be world-saving, literally world-saving. And that's, to me, was heartbreaking, is that we need a bridge. We need a bridge between the inventors and the users, so to speak. We need somebody speaking to the hearts and souls of people so that we actually get everyone ready and on board in a responsible way and start having these discussions, because not everything we invent is great, right? It might seem great, but they have unintended consequences. And if we can open up that discussion to a larger audience, more industries, then we can start building those bridges. And that's incredibly important to me, and it is the heartbeat of the Academy, is building those bridges. So on an individual level for you, what that means is seeing the tech that's coming and building that bridge in your own life. And that doesn't mean using the tech. It doesn't mean integrating the tech. It just means being ready. It means understanding it and not being afraid of it. And it means being truly ready and saying, that's okay. Like, yeah, the tech's gonna come. I see the tech coming. I understand, at least on a fundamental level, what it is. I'm not scared of it. And I also understand how to protect myself, my family, in terms of my income, my livelihood, being able to take care of everything I need to take care of and not be worried about losing my job. And then at the next level up from that is being able to find a mission that is you, that is your heart and soul, and how that mission integrates into this new coming economy. And that is the most exciting part of this whole series, and that's coming up. So you definitely don't want to miss. I believe I'm talking about that in part 3. I don't even know, I'm too excited. But we're gonna get there. And for now, I just want you to know it's not as scary as it seems, but it could be, and we need to start talking about this because nobody has an answer. Governments don't have an answer. They're talking about, universal basic income. They're talking about taxing robot workers as if they were people to try to keep the income coming in, to the government and have the whole system running. But nobody has any answers, no real solutions yet. So the solutions are going to come from you. They're going to come from individuals making unique choices. And I hope that this series opens your eyes to that and opens your eyes to the possibilities. So our part 2 is going to be on Friday. I hope you join us, same time, same place. And I will be having discussions around this in our private Facebook group. So the group is Rebel Leaders. If you haven't joined, go ahead. It's free. Just, request you want to join. I will let you in there. It's just easier to talk in that group rather than on the page. It gets kind of lost on the page. But we can have some fantastic discussions around this. I can answer your questions. And otherwise, thank you so much for joining me and for watching this and for having these very, very important discussions around the topic of the future of work. And I will see you guys in part 2. Thanks. Bye.